up, band heads? I hope you all are enjoying your summer like I am. So, the July 4th date is passed, and to me, July 4th marks not only the middle of summer, but in a month or so, or even in most cases, less than a month, band camps are going to be starting up again, and then marching season is going to be coming soon. It is right around the corner, and I'm excited about it. I think I'm going to actually get to go to some real games, and they're going to feel like real games again. So this week, I have Dr. Rodney Chism on the podcast. Dr. Rodney Chism, he is a graduate of University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. He's been a director on the college level, and he is just having a really good time in his life right now because not only is he one of the authors in the HBCU Experience, HBCU Band Alumni Second Edition out on Amazon, he also had a baby. He just had a baby last month. So he's got a lot of good stuff going on in his life right now. And so his story is cool. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know about him. And he's just an all around funny guy. So here is Dr. Rodney Chism. I am here with my friend, Dr. Rodney Chism. Dr. Chism had several positions in the HBCU band world, including working as an assistant at Jackson State University and also being the head director at one time of Fayetteville State University. And so I'm really glad to have him on because I just want to know a little bit more about his story. So how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Oh, everything is great. Everything is great on my end. I'm just so happy to be here.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to dive right on into it. So why don't you tell the people about your hometown? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the great city of Memphis, Tennessee, home of the blues, birthplace of rock and roll.
All right, okay. So Memphis, very, very musical area. I'm sure you got a lot of exposure to, different music styles. And so tell me about that growing up. Like, did you grow up in a musical family, or what made you want to do music as like a hobby?
Well, yes and no kind of deal. If you were to come to Memphis or anywhere in the Mississippi Delta area, and you research my last name, Chism, you will see that the Chism family there are musicians, pastors, and just a bunch of business entrepreneurs inside just with that name alone. Now, how does it relate to music? Several of us, I have cousins who are like gospel musicians. There are some who are blues artists, R&B singers, whatever the case may be. I was introduced to music at an early age because when I was like little, my grandmother, she was known for her cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have Sunday dinners with, musical icons, the Barge, Bobby DeBarge him and my uncle were best friends. The Barcades used to come over. Confunction used to come in. And we used to literally like I wish that I was older so I would know who these guys were at the time. But I used to have Sunday dinners with legends because, my grandmother stayed in South Memphis, which was not 10 minutes away from the old Stax recording studio. So, a lot of those guys used to come over and eat Sunday dinners with us. And then my daddy himself used to manage, in the 80s, how big live bands were at that time. So my daddy had two bands that he managed. So I was around music all the time and, never knew that I was going to fall into it. But, that's part of the destiny.
Well, that's really cool. I never knew that about you. That you grew up with, like, what'd you say, the Barcades and Confunction, like just coming to your house?
Yeah, they was coming to my grandmother's house. It was just like music icons. Al Green, his churches wasn't too far from there. Just music icons used to just come over Miss Carey's house and eat.
So because it was close to the Stax recording studio, and they just, what's the connection? How did they get to your grandma?
Well, my dad and my Uncle Larry kind of, they all all grew up like in the same, vicinity or whatnot, Although my daddy didn't go to Booker T. Washington, he went to Central, but my mother went to Melrose High School, which is in Orange Mound, the Orange Mound area of Memphis, and they'll kill me if I don't say this. So let me say Orange Mound, Tennessee. And and that at one point in time, that Orange Mound area was known as probably the oldest. It's the oldest Black area in the state of Tennessee. And that's where a lot of the music icons that have come up out of Memphis, that's where they went. They either went to Melrose or they went to Booker T. Washington. And, there was some in other schools, but, back in that time, everybody was connected. Everybody kind of knew each other type deal. And, and whether if it was music, whether if it was athletics, whether if it was just entrepreneurs, they all knew each other.
Wow. That is so cool that you got exposed to that at such a young age. So let's talk about your instrument. What's your main instrument?
Oh, I'm a saxophone player.
Okay, sax. Okay. And when did you start playing the sax?
That story is kind of funny. I started playing actually in high school. I started in high school actually. My very first instrument was the clarinet. Well, I'll start in the beginning. You heard me mention something about growing up in the 80s. So, in the 80s, Purple Rain was a pretty popular movie. So I actually wanted to play the guitar. I wanted to be like Prince, and then there was another movie that came out with the guy who played the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio. He wanted to be a blues artist, so that movie was called Crossroads, and I was like, I thought it was very, I loved the guitar for some reason until one year, Luther Vandross had a song called So Amazing, and there was a show that used to come on BET called Video Soul, and with Donnie Simpson was the host, and he was like, here's an artist. For the first time on this show, we're gonna have an instrumentalist. And it was a guy named Gerald Albright playing a rendition So Amazing. And ever since then, I told my dad that I want to play that instrument that looked like a J. It was something about that particular instrument. When I got to middle school, my sister was in the band and she already had a clarinet. And my mama was like, no, I'm not buying another instrument. So I had to learn the clarinet, and, during that time, people was like, that's a girl instrument. What you doing, brother? And all this being influenced. So when I got to high school, I saw the differences. And the fingerings were exactly the same. So I switched to tenor sax when I got in high school, and the rest is history.
Okay, good. So let's talk about your high school and going into college. Did you know you wanted to study music in college? Like, did your high school, you did a high-stepping high school, correct?
I did.
Okay. And did you go to Central High School in Memphis?
No, I went to Fairleigh High School.
Okay,
I went to Fairleigh High School, and, honestly, I grew up in a strict household. So I joined the band so that I would have something to do right after school, so I wouldn't have to go home. Not knowing the world that I entered, to me, I just looked at the band as a bunch of, I was guilty of the band nerds, the band geeks, because I wanted to play basketball and be an athlete, like any other guy would want to do at that time, and thinking that I'm going to go to the NBA and stuff like that. And when I actually joined the band, that's when I switched and got on tenor sax. I was like, whoa, and I wondered how saw these guys taking it serious. So, and then every year in Memphis, we used to have the Southern Heritage Classic. And, it was at the time, during that time, I saw the early stages of it. So it wasn't always Tennessee State, Jackson State. It was one point in time, it was Tennessee State and Valley. One point in time, it was Tennessee State and Grambling, so I had a chance to see these different schools, not knowing that my high school band director actually was a Valley alum. So I was actually exposed to it at an early part of my life. So as time started going and he started allowing us to go to these college homecomings, and we participate in their parades and they battle the bands. And I just understood and saw that there was a whole new world out there.
Okay.
And it was my senior year when I finally realized, like, wow, what have I gotten myself into? Because, I didn't understand. So now it's like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? My high school band director, he exposed us to a lot of things. And it wasn't just that, he exposed us to full comprehension. We had a concert band, we had a jazz band. He exposed us to all regions, to solo and ensemble. Well, it was called All West Tennessee here. Solo and ensemble, all that, everything that has to do with instrumental music, we were exposed to it. But the HBCU scene, by him allowing us to go to different homecomings every year and participating in their festivities, kind of, I didn't know that there was a HBCU or PWI. I just thought it was just college, so I didn't realize it until my senior year.
Okay, so is that when you saw Pine Bluff for the first time and you were like, I want to be at, how'd you get to UAPB? Like, was it one of your first choices of schools, or?
UAPB was not my first choice. It was not my first choice. Because of the Southern Heritage Classic, my first choice was actually Tennessee State. And because a lot of my friends and everybody else who I known, everybody was like, I'm going to Jackson State. I'm going to Jackson State. JSU this, JSU that. So I wanted to be different and say, I'm going to play against you and I'm going to the school on the other side. The aristocratic bands or whatever that they called it. Says I didn't know. This was like, I was like in the 10th, 11th grade at this point. So I didn't know any better. So, my senior year come rolling around. We go to Tennessee State. That was the year we went to Tennessee State homecoming, just coincidentally that year. And when I tell you, I had the time of my life. Now, I can't tell you because I was, 17 and, doing some things that minors don't need to be doing. But I was like, I'm sold. This is where I'm going. And then that next week, we was like scheduled to go to UAPB. And I was like, boy, if this like this at TSU, I can't wait to see what's in Pine Bluff. When I tell you night and day, it was so boring, so whack, so lame. I'm talking like, wow, this was like fall 95. And you know what I'm saying? And so, time go on. I'm going to Tennessee State. Ain't nothing stopping me, this, that, and the third. It's time for All West. I make All West. I make the top band, which is the blue band, audition and made an alternate to the state and jazz. Mr. Graham, the band director at UAPB, is on his recruitment trip. He stops at Fairleigh, do the recruitment speech, time for the audition, time to do whatever it is that he needs to do. I walked up in that practice room. I didn't even have an instrument in my hand. And I was so cocky and arrogant, and I was like, well, with all due respect, your homecoming was boring, and I'm going to Tennessee State. I wouldn't be caught dead at your school.
You said that?
Yeah, I told him that. And, I'm young and dumb. I'm 17 years old. I don't know better. So, and, of course, my high school band director told me not to ever burn bridges because you don't know where you're going, where you're going to end up. And so, and he was like, well, how you going to pay for it? And I was like, financial aid, scholarships, whatever the case, but I'm going to Tennessee State and there's nothing you're going to do and say about it, He was like, well, thank you. And I walked out of the room. So I didn't go to college right after high school. I sat out a year. So I ended up going to Tennessee State that next year in 97. And, I had a good time, but I'm like, where's the entertainment when when y'all was trying to lure me in here? Where's all that?
Wait a second. Let's back up a minute. Did you march for Tennessee State?
I did in 97.
Wait, why am I just finding this out?
Yeah, I was in that Tennessee State band in 97.
Wait, so that means you played against me. Well, not me. My A&T at Circle City Classic.
In Circle City Class.
Okay.
Hey, yeah. In Indianapolis. Yeah, I played against you.
Okay, so let me tell you, it wasn't against me because that was my last semester in school and I did not march. However, I did go to the Circle City Classic.
I got a story on that one too.
Oh, wait a second. Okay, so wait a minute. Let me just wrap my brain around this because as long as I've known you, I've always just associated you with going to Pine Bluff. And this is my first time learning that you marched for Tennessee State.
Yeah,
okay,
I did.
So let's do a quick little synopsis of that first year at Tennessee State in the band.
Oh, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So, I get to Tennessee State or whatnot, and I mean, when I tell you I was bad, like when I say I was bad, you know, coming from a strict household, never been anywhere like that, I was bad. I had I was so ruthless that I smart talked the drum major, you know. Yeah, I did. I messed around and we were in band camp and something had happened and I didn't know how to do something. And I said, hey, homeboy, told that to the drum major. And drum major was like, what did you say to me? Homeboy, I don't know what to call you. I don't know your name. You address me as Mr. Drum Major, sir. Bro, you ain't about 2 years older than me. You know, I was rude. I was cocky because I was this alternate state saxophone player, you know, and they set me straight real quick. You know what I'm saying? So I was really humble right after that. And you know, later on, I went and apologized to him. And, you know, after my section leader, you know, kind of told him who I was, how I was, because the section leader and I went to the same high school. And he was like, you know, Rodney is generally not a rude person. He gets like that when he's in a new environment. He don't know people. He feel like that he have to make his presence known, whatever the case may be. What I learned about Tennessee State is Tennessee State only played 4 black schools that year, and that was FAMU, Jackson State, A&T, and South Carolina State. After that, we playing to some empty bleachers, and I was like, no, I gotta get to the SWAC, man. I gotta see somebody every week, you know. But I wasn't going to Jackson. Like, I was not going, you know, because that was the closest, you know. So I was like, man, the next place I can go to is Pine Bluff. Oh boy, I hope he don't remember who I am. you know, it's kind of funny. I was like, oh, so I'm working. I called him, set him up, set the audition up, went down there. Went through the audition. He offered me my scholarship and everything. He didn't say anything about it. First day of band camp, it's the playing session. He walked up to me. He said, young man, let me see your wrist. And like he held my wrist like he was checking my pulse. And he started watching his watch. And I was like, what is that about? He said, I'm just trying to make sure you ain't dead because you down here in my band room.
You deserve it. You deserve that.
And I just started laughing. I was like, nah, that wasn't me. I tried to lie my way out of it. But
oh my gosh.
But you know, I'm kind of glad that I went to UAPB. Ain't no kind of, I'm glad I did because I feel like Mr. Graham, and you know, and shout out to him, Mr. Graham gave me opportunities down there that you know, this person who wouldn't be caught dead gave me opportunities that I felt like that I wouldn't have gotten if I was at Tennessee, if I stayed at Tennessee State, because when I entered college, I didn't even enter college as a music major. I was a criminal justice major.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know,
what made you want to switch to music?
God, something just kept taking me to the music department. You know, something just kept on taking me over there. And when I entered at Tennessee State, I entered as a mass comm major because the life that I wanted was the life, kind of the professional life that Steve Harvey had. I wanted to have a radio show. I wanted to have a talk show. I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to act in movies. Everything professionally that Steve Harvey is doing now, I wanted to do that except for write a book. But you know,
you wrote a dissertation, so
you know, you see what I'm saying. So I mean,
you wrote a chapter in a book, which we will be getting to later.
So I mean, you know, it's funny how things play out. Then when I went to UAPB, that's when I changed to criminal justice. Me being 18, 19 years old, and I'm taking intro to criminology, and Miss Professor Thrower says that all her tests are essay, and you know, being that young, I was like, no. And I went over to the music department in like the month of November. And you know how music departments, they make you take a theory placement exam just to make sure. And he was like, you know, this was Dr. Elliott. He's the department chair at Tennessee State now. Dr. Elliott was like, well, Rodney, you know, we can't do like other majors. Well, we took a theory placement exam and you may need to take prep theory. And that's going to put you behind a whole year. So I was like, he said, let me just give you the test and see how you do, just to make sure. And when I got the test, I looked at it, you know, and I was like, for real, this is it? He was like, yeah, take it. And I made a perfect score on it. And he was like, you never had any theory core? I said, no, this looks like beginning band book 1 red book stuff, you know? He was like, well, I see you in theory 1 next semester. You know what I'm saying? So so technically I actually exempted out of it. But yeah, so I mean the rest is history. When I got to UAPB, I was Mr. Graham allowed me to arrange music as a freshman. Later on, I became his first student director under his baton. He allowed me to be a section leader every year I was there, you know, and I was in the saxophone ensemble. You know, I did a lot of things, composed music for the jazz band. You know, it was just I was able to really work my way around that department, and I don't think I would have got that at Tennessee State. And that's not me downplaying Tennessee State, but you know, and I kind of left because, you know, Tennessee State wasn't the place for me. Let me say it like that. So when I got to UAPB, I was just like, I crossed KK side and some more stuff at UAPB, you know? So, hey, UAPB worked out for me.
That is awesome. So, you know, let's talk about a battle that you remember while you were marching for Pine Bluff.
Can I go back to one that was at Tennessee State?
Sure, you can do that too.
So, the one battle that I remember at Tennessee State was the one that you just mentioned about.
Oh my
No, listen. Let me tell you something. This is when Hey in the Middle of the Barn was like the biggest song ever right then. So, you know, we had some arrogant people that was inside the Tennessee State band at that time. And, you know, we kind of, you know, did our business with South Carolina State a couple of weeks prior to that. So I had, one of my, well, they don't have crabs at Tennessee State. So one of my freshman brothers, he was from North Carolina. And everybody was like, yeah, we wax South Carolina State. Yeah, we're going to go and do A&T the same way. One of my freshman brothers was like, hey, man, A&T ain't no band to sleep on, bro. Don't do it, man. Hey, them folks, don't do it. He was just sitting back talking. And, you know, so a couple of us in my room, I can tell the story now. We overslept and got left at the hotel. I don't know if they saw, but we called a cab to it at the time, the RCA Dome. We called a cab to it. We jumped on the bus while the band was in practice. I don't know if A&T band saw us on the bus with our band uniform. I don't know, but when they was out there warming up, man, our bus was shaking. I was like, oh, man, these guys from the cream us tonight, man. These guys. We get to the parade. We marching down the street. It was a building. You know, we get into this intersection. It was a building. We come down there, and as soon as the band got in front of A&T, that was like the loudest smoking on hay in the middle of the barn I have ever heard in my life. It was like so loud that it shook the whole band. Everybody got off step. It was like, whoa. Mm-hmm. It was bad, you know. Then we get to the game that night, man, and it was just like, man, I have never heard a band like that live. You know, I've seen some waxings and some people getting tore up, but actually being in it, that happened in 97, and I still feel that to this day. Like, I'm still haunted by it to this day. Like, because I've never seen that.
Well, let me tell you this. So I might have said this on an earlier podcast, but with Tennessee State, Prof. Graves, you know, y'all's director at the time, he actually taught my mom. So he used to work at A&T. Right. And he actually taught my mom because my mom was a music major. And he still, he taught her how to play clarinet because my mom was a French horn major. So, you know, you have to learn the other instruments. And my mom was like, Christy, Prof. Graves, he taught me how to play clarinet. So at that game, the 97 game, I went to Prof. Graves and I spoke to him and I said, hey, I know you don't know me, but my mother is Zenobia McCracken. Well, Zenobia Walker, but she was Zenobia McCracken. And he was like, yeah, I remember her. Oh, yeah. Like, he was so friendly. Like, I like Tennessee State. They're very much a class act school.
Yeah. Like, I'm still, like I said, Christy, I'm still haunted out that battle to this day. I hadn't seen anything like that. Now, one of my greatest UAPB battles, I have to give it up to the Jackson State UAPB battle of 2000.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you why. I think pride was on everybody's shoulders that day. Mm-hmm. what happened was the game was over at 9 o'clock. We didn't leave that fifth quarter till like 2 in the morning.
Whoa. Now, see, I've seen and been in some long fifth quarters before, but not from like 9 to 2.
I'm finna tell you what happened.
Whoa.
I think we all agreed, well, it ain't us, the directors agreed to play 6 songs each. And Jackson State had to leave, and I think they played a song, and then we played another song that they may have had we saw Jackson State getting up. Like, regular shit. We saw Jackson State getting up, and we was like, yeah, we get to go to the Q party. I mean, we was excited, man. We was like, we finna kick it. We already got our clothes ironed up in the room and everything. Man, Jackson State Magruder sat them folks right back down, man, and the battle just kept going. We literally played every single song in our books. Mm-hmm. Every last one of them. And it was crazy. We were down to just band fanfares. That's all we had left. If you go back and look at that battle, we played a song that we wrote that was intended for the dance routine on the field. And the percussion didn't know when to cut off, so they just started tapping and went into a beat and added a blow. I mean, it was to that point where we was being creative in the stands just to keep going.
Wow.
I don't know. We were getting mad. Like, I'm talking about it got to the point where Jackson State started playing songs. We started singing their song. They started singing ours. And it was just like, can we go?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those are some good stories. So, okay, let's fast forward a little bit. You graduate, and how did you become the assistant at Jackson State?
It's funny. I know how it happened now, but at the time I didn't. One of the band directors, and shout out to him, he was a band director. After I graduated from UAPB, I came back to Memphis and became a high school band director. And I became friends with one of my frat brothers. His name is, I didn't know he was an Alpha at the time, but his name is Derek Hardaway. Dr. Derek Hardaway now. He's actually the principal at Melrose High School, so shout out to him. Dr. Hardaway, he was the band director at the time at a school called East High School here in Memphis. And he and I got friends or whatnot, and, he was asking me if I arranged music and stuff like that. So, I was kind of helping him out, throwing arrangements to him or whatnot. And he was like, man, do you do these? Because I was putting them out pretty fast. And he was like, man, do you do this between your planning periods? You be writing music between classes. You don't got for 5 minutes. I said, don't take me long at all. So he reached out to Lewis Liddell, Dr. Lewis Liddell, and shout out to him. And told Lewis Liddell, he was like, Doc, man, we got this talented guy that's in Memphis, man. I think he'll be a great asset to the Boom or whatnot. And he was like, where did he go? And he was like, Pine Bluff. He was like, I don't know how the rest of the conversation went, but all of a sudden, I'm sitting in my band room and my cell phone, a 601 number just pops up on my, call ID or whatnot. I was like, who calling me from Jackson or whatnot? It was Lewis Liddell. And he had asked me, he had told me that one of his alumni students, reached out to him about my arranging ability. He asked me to send some songs to him or whatnot. And I did. And so he had asked me if I wanted to be their chief arranger or whatever the case may be. And I was like, at Jackson State? How could I say no to that? You know what I'm saying? So, right. It was a pretty rough ride, and he was like, well, they couldn't hire me full time because my first master's degree is not in music, it's in secondary ed. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up staying in Memphis that 07-08 year, but I was just kind of, I was kind of part-time going. Jackson only about 2 hours from here. So I was going back and forward maybe twice a week down there, and gas was a lot cheaper then too. So I was going down there a lot, dropping off arrangements here and there. 08 rolled around. That's when I go around there full time, enrolled in a master music program, finished it in a year. And once I finished, then Dr. Ronaldo Murray gave me the opportunity to be full time on staff. So that the rest is history from that point. So that's how I ended up at Jackson State. That's a prime example. And I tell people this, all the time. That's a prime example of you never know who's watching you, you know. So that's a great example right there. And I tell that story all the time.
Wow. So, okay, let's talk about Fayetteville State. So, did you go from Jackson to Fayetteville, or?
I did. I went from Jackson to Fayetteville. And see, that's kind of funny because I graduated from UAPB in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And the department chair, his name was Dr. Michael Bates. He had pulled me and another student in his office because both of us were the music students that were graduating that year. And he was like, so what are y'all gonna do now? You know? And, you know, Derek gave some type of generic answer. And so did I. You know, one of the things that I said was, I actually spoke my career up. I told Dr. Dr. Bates, I was like, well, in 5 years, I'm going to be on somebody's college band staff. And 10 years from now, I'm going to be somebody's director of bands. He was like, well, Rodney, I didn't hear doctorate nowhere in here. I said, well, that's going to come shortly after. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because I graduated from UAPB. I finished my degree at Jackson State in 2009, which is the same time Dr. Renato Murray hired me. 5 years, somebody's staff. In 2014, I became the director at Fayetteville State. 10 years, somebody's director of bands. You know, and then I got my first doctorate from the American Conservatory of Music in 2017, 3 years later, shortly after. You know what I'm saying? So I actually spoke my career up without even knowing it.
Wow.
You know, it was like, it's crazy. So I was like, it was funny because in 19, I was like, God, when I thought about it, man, I'm going to hit the Powerball in 22.
That is funny. That's funny. So let's talk about what you're doing now. You're back in high school, right?
For the time being, I only stayed at Fayetteville State for a year. It was one of those situations where the university went through an administration change, and you know how it is when individuals want to bring their own people in. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened with that. And after I left Fayetteville State, I ended up going to Texas, little old small town in East Texas called Tyler. And right across the way in Hawkins, there was a smaller HBCU called Jarvis Christian College.
Right. And, oh, yeah. I forgot you were there too.
Yeah, I was the, so I actually, you know, they had someone before that, but I guess he couldn't get it going. But so I'm credited as founding the program there. We even had a nickname, the Sophisticated Sounds of Soul, that, you know, I put together. We called it the S3 or whatnot. And, you know, it was
just like M4, ride. Just like M4.
Don't hate, man. Don't hate. I went there. I did that. I stayed there until 19. And then I went to a small PWI in Dodge City. I only stayed there for a few months because pandemic hit. They had to make changes. And now I came back home to Memphis or whatnot. And yeah, I'm currently in high school, but, you know, you're going to hear something very soon about a new change.
Okay, come on. Yes, come on, teaser. I love it. I love it. Let's talk about this book that we are both in. So this is the second edition of the HBCU Experience, HBCU Band Alumni Edition, which is an anthology of alumni that march in a Black college band that tell their stories about, you know, how, you know, their band stories and how marching the HBCU band helped to make them who they are today. So, how did you feel about writing your chapter?
I felt great about it. You know, actually, after reading the first one, I was kind of upset that I didn't get the opportunity to be in that first one, but you know, no, I actually felt great about it when I received, you know, the instructions on what to do and how to do it and things like that. I got started on it instantly. I'm talking about soon as you guys release, say go ahead and start writing, or how many words, whatever the instructions had to be. I just sat down and it took me 3 class periods to write it.
Okay.
You gotta think about it. And then, when you gave me, like I said, the word count and things like that, you got to think about it. I just finished a degree not too long ago where we have assignments where they have to be exact word count. So I was just like, just going and going and going and going and going. So it was actually a fun experience.
Oh, good. So without giving everything away, because, we got to get people to get the book. And let me just go ahead and say that part of the proceeds of the book are going to the National HBCU Band Directors Consortium, which I remember you talked about them a little bit. You gave them a shout out in your chapter, but without giving everything away, can you talk about like what's included in your chapter?
Basically my journey, how I was introduced to the HBCU community, and basically how the HBCU community, the band community, shaped the person to who you see today.
Okay. All right. So what are you looking forward to when the book comes out? See, here's the thing. This is my second go round, so I kind of know what to expect. And so I know that there's a lot of unexpected things, like things you don't know are coming that, we've been sworn to secrecy to talk about. But what are you looking forward to the most?
Well, since the first book was such a huge success, I like to believe that it was. I'm really just honored and excited to be a part of the whole experience of it itself. My name now is finna go into the Library of Congress. I mean, it's like, wow, So that's the one big exciting. It was the second time, but this is a big exciting thing, though. I'm honored for this. This is a humbling experience.
I guess we're going to kind of wrap things up, but is there anything that you want to maybe have some good parting words about? Like, how about a lesson that you take with you now that you learned from marching at either Pine Bluff or Tennessee State?
Well, it's not even so much as me marching. It's more of, like you said, you throughout the marching experience, but it's also what I've learned, like working at Jackson State, working at Fayetteville State, working for Jarvis, being around the HBCU consortium, my colleagues around them, and just the overall learning experience. Because, one thing that we fail sometimes to realize, as educators, we are also still students to the game. So just because, we spent 4 years marching and experienced all that gruesome band camp and 10-game seasons and traveling on buses and eating at Golden Corrals and buffets and Ryan's or whatever, that you go to, and just the overall discipline and the experience of actually participating, there's also a side of it because we are educators in it, right? We're also leaders. So what Mr. Graham, what Dr. Sanford, what Dr. Liddell, all these guys have, Mr. Prof. Graves, Kevin Davenport, I can go on and on and on. What these guys conveyed into me, now it's my turn to convey it out to students. And so now students are walking away saying, I remember when Doc, well, that's what they call me now. I remember when Doc did this and Doc taught me this and Doc taught me that. And it's just like the funniest thing that my students call me, that before I got the Doc, they never called me Mr. Chism. They used to call me Father Chism because they say I act like their dad more. When I say act like their dad, I'm getting on them about their grades, getting on them about not going to class, getting on them about not eating, not drinking enough water. I mean, just things that parents do. Pull your pants up. Young lady, you revealing too much. Cover that up. I act more like their dad than an actual teacher. And students take heed to that. So that's the one thing about me. Is just it feels good. And then 3-4 years later, you see them graduating because of the nuggets that you dropped on them. And that's like the greatest feeling of our lives, especially mine.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That is a great way to leave. So we are gonna go ahead and end this conversation, but it has been a pleasure talking with you, Dr. Chism.
Likewise.
You have listened to the HBCU Band Experience with Christy Walker. Interviews and editing conducted by yours truly, Dr. Christy Walker. The music is District 4 by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find this podcast on HBCUbandexperience.podbean.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Take care.